with playing out and with Japanese examples as well. Jelte,
thanks. And thanks for the invitation. So I arrived here with a rather specific and perhaps a technical presentation, which I have largely reworked, because I thought it might be useful to take a step back and talk more generally about the concept of what many call community energy, because I think it has an important part to play in the discussion about housing. I hope that's all right, and I hope that the result is not sort of a schizophrenic mismatch. And I will introduce myself along the way and also substantiate what I just said, hopefully. Next slide, please.
Yeah, I've got my job. I'm just ordering taxis. Right.
Okay,
that way.
Great. So I'll start with a bit of background, because actually I think I'm an unfamiliar face to most of you. At least most of you are familiar to me, anyway. So I'll tell you a little bit about where I'm coming from, and then talk about what I increasingly think of as the role for civic society rather than communities in renewable energy generation, and finish off with a particular case study to do with district heating, community district heating in Scotland. Thanks. Great. So I have I only do community energy, by the way, so it's not, my life isn't as complicated as this makes it seem. But I do it from as many sort of dimensions as I can handle. So 5 years ago, I moved to Scotland to start a social enterprise which works all over the world to facilitate and enable community energy. That's called SEEN. I also work for the Scottish government, and I'm also an academic studying community energy. So that's me. Okay, a little bit about my philosophy. So I'm kind of, I've kind of reached a level where I've become a little bit frustrated with what I consider to be an overemphasis on technology and gadgets. I just spent the last 3 days with engineers, so that might be a big part of the reason why. But in my considered opinion, a lot of the technologies are already there. Sure, they're not perfect and they require further evolution and so on, but I see institutional barriers as being kind of a major and undeservedly neglected place for action. Not just academically, but also policy and so on. A lot of these renewable technologies are now quite mature, and we could be rolling them out much more effectively and having them be in the hands of local stakeholders. Okay, show you one back, which I haven't quite finished. Okay, I would also suggest to you that climate change is not merely an engineering problem. I think most people would probably agree with that. Okay, my particular research focus on the research side and also on the practitioner side is about decentralized energy as opposed to distributed, which has slightly different connotations. I'm particularly interested in what economists call externalities, not just positive externalities, but also negative externalities that come about through local and community ownership of energy generation. So an example of the sort of approach that I like to take is this fairly recent paper in which we, instead of taking a case study approach, took a cross-sectional approach. We looked at a large sample and rigorously attempted to compare the cost of developing a given renewable project for a community to a private sector developer. Where are the differences in timescales, in costs, and so on and so on. So if you want to know more about sort of my approach to things, I'm really trying to move away from a case study sort of based thing and really go for cross-sectional. Have a look at that. Can I have one slide back? I didn't miss anything. So, sounds good. All right, next. Thanks.
No?
Yeah. Okay. At the end of the day, I think that the halcyon days of academics being able to do things and spend public taxpayer resources on satisfying their curiosity are over. In my opinion, researchers have the equivalent of a Hippocratic oath to not just communicate the consequences of their conclusions for the planet or choose your domain, but also to make sure that the research questions they ask in the first place are properly informed by actual real-life problems. And that is something I dare say that researchers could be doing a lot better job at, not least by closer collaboration with actual practitioners. If I just talk about community energy literature, which is the only thing I know about, I think it's about 2 to 3 years sort of behind. There's like a phase lag, what is actually happening on the ground? And I don't think there's really a good excuse for it not to be that way. Of course, I appreciate funding constraints and like citations and so on are very rich. I'm ultimately, at the end of the day, interested in delivering projects, but also studying, how that comes about. And so here are 3 projects that were commissioned recently, not just in sort of an OECD context, but also in India, for example. Next slide, please. Great. So let me talk a little bit generally about renewable energy and why I think it's important also for housing. Thanks. Next slide. Okay. So it is very easy not to appreciate just how fundamentally different having a stock type of energy is from a flow type of energy. And again, this lends itself also to the temptation of just thinking it's an engineering issue. So obviously stock is, it's fixed, it's static, you've got X kilograms of oil in the ground, boom, centralized fossil fuel generation, which vastly dominates energy production today. Flow, the resource is distributed and you kind of can't go out and get it and bring it somewhere. It doesn't lend itself to economies of scale. Actually, in a way, it lends itself to diseconomies of scale. And this is, for me, a very profound thing. Because it's not just sort of a spatial / geographic / engineering thing. It has consequences for institutional configurations. It has consequences for ownership. It has consequences as well. I'm going to say something quite controversial, and I usually start talks with this. If anyone knows of a more effective way to bring empowerment, to use an overused and almost meaningless term, to the areas that need it most, more effective than renewable energy, I'm open to being convinced. But I have yet to find such a thing. Renewable energy for me is the means towards ends like owning housing and so on. And I'm going to show you a few examples to put my money where my mouth is. Next slide, please. All right, now I have to go too technical. Thanks. Next one. Okay, there's increasing talk of disruptive energy. Now, to me, it gets particularly interesting if the major incumbent players start worrying about this. And take it from me, they are. We have the likes of PricewaterhouseCoopers, the largest trade organization tasked with representing electricity utilities in the US, and E.ON spinning off a dedicated renewables arm from its fossil fuel activities. This, to me, is a manifestation of what I think is a disruptive change and transition that is beginning to happen, and will bring significant opportunities if we manage to leverage it. Next slide, please. Okay, just a quick example. I threw this in because of housing. Have any of you been to Gia? Not even. Okay. Anyone know where it is? Okay. So in 2002, the Gia community cobbled together some money to buy 3 turbines second-hand, and this was at a time when the population was 86, from a historic maximum of I think 600, largely because of the collapse of the fishing industry. The ferry was no longer running regularly, not even to speak about the state of the housing stock. School was on the point of closure. Demographic was strongly headed for old and very few young people, young families. Anyway, 3 small turbines, 225 kilowatts each, and an average profit annually of about £100,000. Go to Gia today, don't take it from me. It's completely changed the trajectory for this small island. People are now moving to Gia. They reinvested the money in a 4th turbine. Reinvested it in ground source heat pumps, housing, and so on and so on and so on. Just one example. Just one more quickly, I won't belabor the point. Could you go to the next slide? You probably know about Fintry. 2007, closed a deal with a commercial developer, reinvested it. They just installed a district heating scheme powered by biomass, also powering a school, sports facilities, and all on the back of 1 turbine. Next slide, please. Okay, the reason I decided to start this thing is in the UK is actually because of how the market is structured. Now everyone knows Scotland has got a great resource when it comes to renewables, particularly onshore wind, also wave and tidal. And solar energy is actually pretty doable, or it was until recently, in the UK as well. But let's look at who actually owns the blue sector in that pie. So that pie was my estimate in 2002 for what the resource potential is, and the blue was how much was developed in 2012 onshore. Same thing for Wales, England, and Northern Ireland. Okay, but let's look at who owns it. That white slice was at the time my estimate for what proportion in sort of raw kilowatt terms of that blue developed slice was in the hands of local and community stakeholders. Less than 4%. Next slide. Now let's compare this to the so-called success stories of Germany and Denmark. Sorry, I don't know why that went all South Korean. So in Germany, about 56% of onshore generation is owned by local folks. Not strictly speaking just community groups, urban businesses, really farmers have a large part to play in that. Denmark, 86%. So that is, to me, the single largest difference between energy in the UK and in Denmark and Germany. And in fact, I think we have no chance of really getting serious about objectives like climate change mitigation and so on without genuine civic participation. And we're already beginning to see it in things like how hard it is to get planning permission. Do you think the Danes get up in arms about wind turbines in their backyard? To a much lesser extent, because they, since the 70s, have a culture of actually investing in them, and it's had a transformative effect on both rural and urban communities. Next slide, please. Last sort of background slide: the sector in the UK, I think segment is a better word anyway, but whatever, is growing at about 30%. I don't think many people know that, but that is an astronomical rate. So the sum total of all UK community energy in raw kilowatt terms is growing by a third per year. That's 3 times as fast as the commercial sector. So, there's real momentum there. Okay, thanks. Great. So I hope that could inform the discussion a bit going on. So, a specific case study to do with heat. So, 2 quick observations. First of all, this is a table of fairly recent community share raises. You're probably familiar with community benefit societies and co-ops, and in fact you probably have heard of many of these projects. But I want to draw your attention to the next slide, please. Sorry to be so fussy, but no.
That one.
I want to draw your attention to this. This to me is the most interesting column. That is a column of the internal rates of return that are offered to the individual shareholders that make up these cooperatives. Now, I don't know, any quick response to that to anyone that hasn't seen this before? Just the numbers. Do you think they're high or low?
Can't read the actual figures.
Oh, I'm sorry.
They're good.
They're between 4 and 7%. Now, the point...
Much higher than interest rate.
Yeah, sure. But that is not how a commercial investor would think about it. A commercial investor would not touch this, given the risks involved. My point is, just being obsessed with sheer returns, as I would argue Amber Rudd et al. Are currently doing, is not the way to go. These projects, with few exceptions, were oversubscribed. People are willing to put in this money, which translates to cheap capital. Why go to a Main Street bank if indeed they'll lend to you and without collateral? We've already talked about that. That's very hard. If you can raise it locally, of course, there's transaction costs involved. I would, in fact, go further and say that the Danes, with all their municipal CHP, combined heat and power and so on, they would never have been able to build out even. They would never have been able to build out over a quarter of those projects if it wasn't for the fact that the margins are low, but people were willing to accept them. It would not have been possible with with sort of a more traditional commercial private sector approach, which is the philosophy behind this particular project. I probably have how many minutes? 2? Okay, next slide, please. Well, everyone knows that. We got high fuel poverty and low gas penetration. So basically the motivation for this particular project I'm hoping to develop is what is the business case for mine water geothermal in Scotland. I'm spending time and research on this because I believe it's imminently replicable and scalable as a technology. For those of you that don't know, mine water geothermal relies on the fact that we've got a massive complex of mines under much of the UK, including Scotland's central belt, that are not doing anything. They're abandoned, but they're great for storing water. And they have billions and billions of liters of water, hot water in them. And we can tap into that as they're doing in projects in the Netherlands and in Germany. The really interesting thing about this, though, is that there's a correlation between fuel poverty and indeed poverty and where these mines are. Because, of course, there is no mining industry anymore. So, surprise, surprise, exactly where the resource is best is where fuel poverty is worst, which inspired this project. Here's the project team. You can look at the slides later on. I'm in a bit of a hurry now, okay? No lecture. This is just one complex. This is not a particularly good area. This is an average area when it comes to a mine resource. Again, about 100 years worth of resource there, enough to provide water to the local communities. We're designing a district heating network, which is old fare in much of Europe and considered quite radical in the UK. I believe Ruth will be telling you more about that. Next slide, please. The relationship with mine water right now is not very good. So this is the outflow. You notice it's orange-red. That's because of a lot of iron and sulfide and even some arsenic. But we're actually able to leverage this very negative relationship because we've developed a design that will actually mitigate this contamination issue and provide low carbon heat at the same time through a wetland system. Right. Yep, thanks. This is what it looks like. Are you familiar with how district heating works? So don't come out of this talk thinking that I'm proposing to take contaminated mine water into people's homes. You think through something called a heat exchanger, and then the water stripped of heat goes somewhere else, and it's a completely separate circuit. Don't worry about that. Okay, so I find this quite promising, and I want to salute the Scottish Government for funding this and other similar projects which are innovative, particularly in the institutional sort of domain rather than the technical domain. We've completed a comprehensive feasibility and are now looking to actually do drilling. I realize this part of the talk is quite rushed. Please talk to me if you want any more details, and thanks for your time.
Thank you, Jelte.